Hello and welcome to the Print Softcover. My name is Prasanna Bachchhav, and today we have with us Sridhar Rammurthy, a senior business leader with over 25 years of experience across India's leading insurance and consulting firms. Earlier this year, he also published The Supreme Cipher, which is a work of speculative fiction. And now we're discussing his new book, Itihaas, a performance model for modern leadership, published by Rupa Publications. Welcome to the Print, Sridhar.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here. Really
Uh,
excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. What do you think is the biggest problem facing today's leadership?
Well, see, besides several other things, I think what has happened is because of humongous amount of information, data, analysis available at a click of a button, I think it's the decision conundrum that most of the leaders today often face because we're spoiled for choices and
Hmm.
to really filter out multiple solutions and choose which is the most appropriate one for the problem that you're having. I think that is I think the summation of anything and everything that encompasses in leadership. Uh, Decisions makes a leader, right? You take the right decision at the right time. So I think the ability to take a decision, uh, weighing the pros and cons of various different solutions, and having the right amount of filter, right kind of filter rather, I would say, will really help you to take the right decision. So that is something which I think, yeah, is the sort of the fulcrum or the main crux of this book that I wrote.
So you offer in the book the Itihaas Performance Model, or the IPM, as the answer to today's leadership questions. How do you see, where does it come in? Uh, how does it solve uh, the crisis of making the correct decision?
Okay, let us just reframe it. Uh, it's not about being correct; it's about being aligned with whatever context that a leader has. Okay, for example, when the Industrial Revolution started off, did anyone think about the environment and the dangers it can bring to environment? When we move from steam engine to, let's say, a diesel based or a coal based engine, did anyone talk about the pollution that coal may cause, or subsequently when electricity reached everyone's homes? Because the context was different then. So
Hmm.
people act as per the context, right? So when I say this particular framework, see, the birth of this framework is how what based on various different stories that are there in our Itihas, right? And I also transpose that to very modern day stories. Like, for example, you must have seen the example in my book. First example itself is the moonshot example. So, so it's like a sort of a culmination of all of that. And I said, okay, how do I sort of simplify it for our readers? So, if the readers were to break it down into smaller steps and understand for themselves that how does each of these things work, it should be able, so framework often becomes a easier tool to be used. Otherwise, what happens is it will be conceptual. So I say, in Itihas, I can tell you a lot of stories where you have to derive learning yourself. So what Itihas Performance Model does is it distills the the wisdom from our ancient stories, transposes it on modern stories, and gives you small nuggets, of very interesting information. And there are steps. So basically, this book is like a corporate manual or a leadership manual where it
Yeah.
breaks your entire problem down into several steps. And as you move from one to the other, the sequence is something which I say it's perennial because we've like sort of transposed this to almost every problem in the world. And we said, yeah, this is exactly the problem is, from the example that I just gave you to, let's say, very recently we had the war, right?
Hmm.
And it may just reoccur in the future also. If you transpose this model onto that problem of the war as to why the war happened, what is the context, so you'll realize that it fits in very beautifully and it's very relevant and it's based on principles which are like millennia old. So one of the things which triggered me to sort of name it Itihaas Performance Model and sort of give it in a framework methodology was that why should you base your leadership decision on a framework which is very new and
Hmm.
which may keep changing? Most of the frameworks that we have learned in our B schools and all have been formed in the last 30, 40, 50 years, right?
Yeah.
Post World War II, when all these management thoughts develop. And they keep
Hmm.
evolving, they keep changing. But some of these principles that I based my particular model on, they've been unchanged for thousands and thousands of years. I will not get into the dating of how old it is, but yeah, whichever new scholar comes and gives me a date, I'll go with that. The latest being about almost 12 and a half, 13,000 years old. And the principles remain same. So why not base your entire leadership decision onto something which is solid, perennial, and permanent?
And in the book, you mentioned that the IPM, it's not
Hmm.
about religion, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
you do refer to shlokas, to excerpts from the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata. So, how do you separate religion from the IPM?
I'll give you a simple answer. Okay. I think it's a very recent answer. Madras High Court, I think day before yesterday or yesterday only, I think there is a certain, what do you call it? The diktat had come that Bhagavad Gita and a lot of these Vedanta, these are not religious texts. Okay, so from a legal standpoint, also, if you go, a high court has sort of given a sort of a mandate or given a
Hmm.
ruling that this should not be. It doesn't belong to any religion, right? It's not religious. It's not saying that follow this particular god or anything. It is saying that if you need to lead your life, okay, with the conundrums, with the confusion, with the ego, with whatever way of being you are, how do you sort of take good decisions? And you're able to be contented with those decisions and the results thereof. So what happens is quite often we don't delve deep into the subject. What
Hmm.
and the misnomer is the shlokas, right? So when people see that there is a puja at home, they hear some shlokas, and then they see Bhagavad Gita, there's some shlokas. So shloka is equal to shloka, shloka is religious, and that's
Hmm.
how we equate
Yeah.
things. But
Hmm.
shloka is not a shloka is a language, right? It's a language. It's an
Yeah.
ancient language. If you read an English Bhagavad Gita, does it sound very religious to you? Suppose you are not chanting the shlokas, you just read the meaning of the shloka. Does that really sound something which is religious, where there are some dictates given? It doesn't, right? It's basically there is one gentleman who got totally confused at the time of taking a decision, which was the war. Okay, the war is the ultimate action that a warrior. Now imagine a warrior who was training his entire life for that moment. He got
Yes.
confused, right? And there is another very able gentleman who became his charioteer. He's trying to clarify his doubt. Basically, what
Hmm.
he's doing is he's trying to clarify the context. Okay,
Yeah.
it would have been a religion when that godly figure would have told this man, "Ki look, I am telling you, go fight."
Hmm.
He didn't do that, right?
Yeah.
He he gave the perfect context to, let's say, Arjuna. Krishna gave the context to Arjuna, and not under one I would say pillar. There are several pillars. It could be governance, leadership, esoteric thoughts, non-esoteric thoughts. So many different planes on which the context got clarified, and when the context got clarified, absolutely, then the decision of fighting or not fighting was left on to Arjuna.
Hmm.
That's what
Yeah.
I meant. And that's where the context thing comes from. Imagine
Okay.
Krishna used over 700 shlokas to clarify context of one
Hmm.
person. So
Yeah.
that's the effort one has to take to clarify context.
So, when did you first get interested in these stories, in the mythologies, in the scriptures?
Well, like anyone else, initially, Doordarshan, I think, played a very important role in my own life. Doordarshan and a
Yeah.
combination of Amar Chitra Katha. That's
Of
that's
course.
all. That's where it all started.
Yeah.
And like any child, my interest was also in the action. Okay, like when you see the movie, the parts which you like are the ones where which has action, right? No one likes the drama, you know. So the actions. So I constantly was into finding out action. Oh, Mahabharata, let me go and see how the war happened. What kind of weapons did they use? Were they magical? What's magic? Is magic real or not? And these kind of questions. And you kept on reading, and then as I grew, there I had access to different kinds of thoughts, of various different scholars. And the more and more I started reading these, they started giving me sort of answers to my day-to-day problems and
Hmm.
more of corporate problems.
Okay.
Dilemmas.
Hmm.
I've got a mandate to, let's say, prune my team, take out two people in the team.
Hmm.
The famous bell curve. So bell curve management. So the
Hmm.
bell curve, as per the bell curve, you have to distribute your bonuses in a certain manner. So basically, that means I need to reduce two people in my team. How do I do that? Should I? My top guy, the top rate guy, is excellent in his work, but his team management skills are not very good. He's a little unethical. Okay. Versus a person who has a mid kind of a score, but he's excellent when it comes to managing his team, very ethical, high on
Hmm.
integrity. So if I were to
Yeah.
kick out one among the two, who should I?
Hmm.
So such conundrums and dilemmas often come, right?
Yeah.
Top producer gets me result, gets me immediate accolades. The mid
Yes.
guy probably the is a longer bet for me. So how do you
Hmm.
sort of decide? So the beauty of this, the question that you just asked, the beauty is you don't have to like open the book every time you have a problem.
Hmm.
That's the beauty of the methodology which our ancient seers used. They taught most of the things through stories, and stories stick like nobody's business, right? So and all these stories have a lot of these dopamine, extracting methods because they have uncertainty, they have a lot of drama. So these stories stick. So when you have a problem, what happens is the solutions or the methodology just occurs to you. You need not go through the method; it just occurs to you.
Yeah.
So the more stories you imbibe in you, the more that occurrence and the smoother the occurrence will happen. That's the whole
Got it.
method, which I think our ancient seers mastered over several millennia.
So when did you crystallize this into like a formal model?
Formal model, see, it was always there in the sense that how did I even come about doing all of this? So so way back, I think 2010 is when I started putting, you know, pen to the paper, and
Okay.
this model sort of developed as an experiment
Hmm.
where we said, okay, let's take crazy targets. Okay, like organizations usually give target of 10%, 20%, 30% at best, that year-on-year growth. So we said, okay, can we grow at 100%? And we said, okay, if we were to solve this problem of growing at 100%, what is the action that we're supposed to take? So we work backwards. Okay, so if you were to grow at 100% or more than that, what should be done? And that is when, to make the whole process interesting and so that people understand, we sort of use the story-based approach. We said, okay, let's connect this to our Itihaas. And in this whole process, when we did that, I saw, and along with my team, what we saw that sometimes when context is clear, it's so easy. So everyone is on the same context. We all know that we need to do some actions. So
Yeah.
we know that there is a context, there is a sankalpa. Sankalpa means we need to grow at 100%. And
Hmm.
there are set of actions one is supposed to take.
Yeah.
But still people don't take actions. Something stops them from taking the action. That is the manovigna. Manovigna are those thoughts which stops you from taking the right action. Okay. So as you see, as we went ahead, we saw that people are not taking actions. They're hesitant to take actions or they're scared to take actions because of some manovigna. So we said, okay, let's do something so that the manovigna goes away.
Okay.
And as I started working on the Manovigna, we said, oh my God, the person's reality is only different.
Hmm.
The entire reason why we had a certain process, the understanding of which in the last mile is very different. Like I'll
Hmm.
give you an example. I come from a very sales related background.
Hmm.
Sales is a process. So you need to have a target. You need to have prospects. So this is a sales lingo, right? So we have suspects and then we have prospects. Suspects are those who are interested, who probably have seen your ad, but you don't know whether they'll buy from you or not. So you do certain things for the become prospect. You say, yeah, I'm interested. And then you go and sell the product to them. They should pay the money and they should retain the product, not return it back to you. Now, to make this entire process, there are processes, systems, there are books, or people need to store data, store what did they do, how many clients did
Hmm.
you meet today. You need to follow
Yeah.
all that. Now, we made the process keeping in mind a certain context. We said, okay, this will be important so that subsequently, going forward, if you want to
Hmm.
retract, if you want to go and see what happened in the past, you should be able to have all the data in one place. And we use
Hmm.
technology. But you know what? The seller, when the same system was exposed to the seller were not taking the action because they thought that through all this technology, their clients are going to be taken away by the company. That's why they're making us use these systems. So
Hmm.
they held on to their clients. They said,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll not give my clients to the company. Because if I give my clients to the company will not need me anymore and they will kick me out and directly deal with the. So imagine this is the difference in context. My context was I wanted every data to be in one place so that later on when you want to extract the data, it will become easy. Customer service becomes better. But the seller has a very different perceived reality. So the idea is to bring all the realities together through communication, through workshops, through whatever works in your organization.
So
You
what
do
was the
all those
solution?
actions so that everyone. Solution is when the system was implemented, it was implemented. It was told to the seller probably that this will help you to close better. We were trying to sell the concept to them. This will help
Hmm.
you. Now they
Hmm.
said, I don't see any help coming into the system. I think there is a clandestine, there is a ulterior motive that the organization has. That's
Yeah.
why they're trying to automate this whole process. So what it took was several hundred workshops with thousands of sellers in different parts of the country. Make them sit, let them express, let them ask you questions and clarify to the last degree and ensure that this is not for data, not for taking your clients away, but this is being done to so that your overall organization and overall process and customer service becomes better. Despite doing all of this, people will still have, everyone is not as expressive, but the result
Yeah.
was from whatever 10%, it went up to about 70, 80% better.
Okay.
Now, once we did that several times, not once, thousands of times, in my career, I must have dealt with almost about 1.5 lakh, slightly more than that, people
Hmm.
individually in terms of grooming them and taking them to a certain success. So,
Hmm.
so once all of this happened, when we sat back and said, okay, let us analyze what worked and what didn't. That was the birth of this entire framework. So, what did we do first? What was step number one? Step number one was to tell people what is to be done or clarifying the context. So we said, okay, first step was we stated the context that this is my context, and then I went to the recipient of that context. Say, what is your understanding of this? That is when the perceived reality came. That my reality was different than that person's reality. So we sort of sat together and made it like a common reality. Then we said, okay, now since your perceived reality is clear, what is the sankalpa that you need to do? And then what is the right action subsequent to that? When you do right action, you get results. And then you recommit yourself to the same result again. So that's how this whole uh, 7 step framework comes into being. Yeah.
And my last question to you is that self-help books are often criticized as
Hmm.
people say that they don't work, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you answer that charge?
That's why I don't call it a self-help book because,
Okay,
see, I've been reading a lot of these self-help books. And my problem was, see, I also understood why a thing doesn't work is because we don't put things into action. We think that by reading a self-help book, automatically things will change. It doesn't work like that. You will get results only when you take actions, right? Tell me, when you drive a car, if you memorize the entire manual how to drive a car, will the car run on its own? It won't,
of
right?
course not.
You
Yeah,
have to take some actions. First of all, getting into the car, putting your seat belt, turning off the engine, turning on the engine. You know,
yeah, yeah,
in old world, you put it in gear one, press the combination of brake and clutch and accelerator.
yeah.
It will take actions. So a lot of times self-help books don't work because people get a good feeling. They get motivated. But it remains at the realm of motivation and not it
Hmm.
doesn't get translated into actions.
Yeah.
So this book is not a self-help book. It's like a manual. And what I've attempted to do through this manual is, yeah, try to fix, create some interesting stories and all. But if you set aside all those things, there are tools given. Like for example, you come to context. Your question should have been that, okay, this guy is talking so much about context. Context. What do I do with this context in
Hmm.
my, like, after reading this book? What do I do as a step? What is this
Hmm.
context business? So I've given methods. There are tools given there
Work. Yeah, yeah.
that how do you sort of get to the context? What are the questions to ask? Their answers there, and then move to the next step. So like that, there are tools for everything. So it's like very easy for a person who's working in a corporate or a non-corporate also to sort of use this book, put it into practice.
Okay. It was lovely chatting with you, Sridhar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Prasanna. Thanks.